Who has the best defense in the NFL? Is it the Seattle Seahawks or is it somebody else? Today, I will be giving you guys my top 10 defenses heading into the 2026 NFL season. Let's hop into it. And we are going to begin at number 10 with the Cleveland Browns. So obviously, when you lose a player of the status of a Myles Garrett, that's going to obviously drop you down in terms of rankings. Myles Garrett is just that impactful of a player. And hypothetically, last year, if you took away Myles Garrett from this team, let's say you stripped away the 23 sacks he had last year, this team would have finished 2025 with only, with only 30 sacks last year. He is that impactful of a player that obviously this defense is going to drop down a little bit. Now, in return for Myles Garrett, they got a really good pass rusher in Jared Verse, who statistically hasn't been like overly dominant or anything crazy like that. But the play on the field has been really good. His ability to create pressure, and hopefully sooner or later those pressures will turn into sacks. And in addition to that, the sacks could and pressures could give opportunities to other guys on this defensive line. So without Myles Garrett, this defense will take an obvious step back, but I think the secondary is still one of the better in the league. Carson Schwessinger now in year 2. You add on Quincy Williams, and your defensive line should still be adequate with hopefully a healthy Malik Collins, an improving Mason Graham, and Jared Verse also taking another step forward. You look at this depth chart here, and I think not only do they have a really good starting unit, but I also think that the backups behind these guys are also pretty solid too. I think Isaiah McGuire could step in and play a role. I like Mike Hall Jr. I think Justin Jefferson, their rookie from Alabama, could definitely play a role for this team if he has to. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren is also in the mix here as well. Now, I think the next big question that's going to have to be answered is, what does Mike Rutenberg look like, their new defensive coordinator? We go down to his history here. This is from the Cleveland Browns website. Started off in Washington, went to some college ranks, Jacksonville, San Francisco, Jets, Atlanta, now the Cleveland Browns. So this is really his first year ever being a defensive coordinator, obviously in the NFL, but has been around the league for multiple, different organizations and teams. I'm very excited for him to get this opportunity, but obviously not having the guy you had for the past couple of years who's been unbelievable with Myles Garrett, that combination being out the door, I do think is going to hold this team back a little bit, but at the end of the day, I still think this Browns defense has enough of a core and identity to still be one of the better units in the league. All right, next up, let's talk about the Los Angeles Chargers at number 9. Quietly, this Chargers defense has been one of the better units in the league. This is from last year, 8th in opponents' points per game, 6th in opponents' yards per game, and hanging around the top 10 or top 12 in almost every single statistical category. And they're a pretty balanced unit. They're one of the better run defenses in the league, but they're also one of the better coverage defenses out there. What's holding me back the most about this team is the things they lost this offseason. Jesse Minter, their fantastic defensive coordinator, is now out the door coaching for the Baltimore Ravens. And I think he's going to do a fantastic job there. And honestly, they probably should be or could be in the top 10 defenses this year. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. We'll have to find out. But Minter is a fantastic defensive coordinator that did so many good things for this Chargers team that obviously seeing him go is going to hurt. But in his place, they just hired, I guess not just hired, but they hired Chris O'Leary, who, I'll be honest with you, I'm not really too familiar with him a whole bunch here, but he does have a lot of college experience. Georgia State, Florida Tech, Notre Dame, that's really a good spot to be at. Then goes to the Chargers in 2024 as a safeties coach, then goes to Western Michigan, and then now is the defensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Chargers. Usually I'm a little bit more qualified to talk about these guys, but I'll be honest with you, I'm not too familiar with Chris O'Leary. So this is sort of an interesting hire, somebody that has not really had a long coaching career, only since 2015. I guess he might have played some football too, wide receiver, I think I'm seeing right here. So it's kind of an interesting spot. I'm definitely intrigued to see what he can do. Obviously, like I'm rooting for the guy. He's got a lot of really good coaching experience at Notre Dame, for the Chargers, Western Michigan, but it is all pretty recent. So we'll have to wait and see. This is a pretty big unknown, which is different from what Jesse Minter was, because Jesse Minter was kind of a known product. Obviously, he was a Michigan defensive coordinator, but he was Jesse Minter. He was awesome at Michigan. He was also awesome as a position coach for many years. But the good news for Chris is that he is entering a defense that is a pretty flooded defense with talents. Obviously, you did lose your star pass rusher. I say star pass rusher kind of loosely this offseason. Odafe Owe came in via trade last year and put up some pretty big numbers, but I mean, even without him last year, they're still pretty good. You got Tyler Tart, you got Dalvin Tomlinson, you got Jamar Caldwell. Tuli Pelotu, I think, is just continuing to get better and better. You still got Khalil Mack. You added in Akeem Mesidor, Dion Henley, Denzel Perriman. I mean, just a really good linebacker combination. And your secondary is also pretty special too. This defense doesn't have like the big splashy names. Like they don't have a Myles Garrett or a TJ Watt or a Fred Warner or Pat Surtain, big names that everybody knows. But what this unit does have is a lot of continuity, a lot of chemistry, and a lot of really good football that they've played. So I'm going to give them the nod at number 9. All right, moving over to number 8. Let's talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars. I tell you what, man, I think the NFL needs to put a little bit more respect on the Jacksonville Jaguars name. I understand that they did not have a great offseason, but this defense and this team in general is still one of the better teams out there. I mean, they won 13 games last year, gave the Buffalo Bills a real fight in the playoffs, and had they won that game and things gone their way, maybe they'd go on to make a deeper playoff run than what they actually ran. I think this Jaguars team is really talented. Again, I know that their offseason was just bizarre. Not re-signing Devin Lloyd, not re-signing Travis Etienne. That one's a bit more understandable. But then not really addressing either one of those positions in the draft or free agency was a little weird. But I don't want to lose the plot here on this Jaguars team. They won 13 games last year for a reason, and one of the bigger reasons why was because this defense was fantastic. Again, kind of like the Los Angeles Chargers, this defense doesn't have a ton of massive big names. I mean, Josh Hines-Allen is probably the one guy that does have a big name here, but you got Trayvon Walker, who just got paid, who's been really underrated for most of his career, despite being the #1 overall pick. You got Eric Armstead with Devon Hamilton. You also drafted Albert Regis, and you traded for Rook. I'm not going to pronounce that last name, Rook O, who I think could be in a better spot here in Jacksonville than what he was in Atlanta. So I like your defensive line here. I think there's some decent depth in the interior. I like your starters. I like your pass rushers. Linebacker is going to be the big question mark with Ventrell Miller specifically. Not having Devin Lloyd in the mix is going to be very interesting. But Foyesett Oluwakon's one of the better run defenders, and just he's just one of the best physical linebackers in the league. And then in your secondary with Travis Hunter now hopefully playing more full-time corner with Monteric Brown, Jarian Jones, Jordan Lewis. And your safeties are pretty good too. This is just a really deep football team with a really good starting unit with honestly very little holes. You have some of the better safeties in the league. Antonio Johnson was great last year. If Travis Hunter's more full-time corner, then I think you're going to get a really good corner in him. You got pass rushers, you got the run defense. You have to replace Devin Lloyd, which is one of the few question marks that this defense does have. But I think you have continuity not only on your roster, because your roster defensively is basically the exact same from last year, just maybe with more Travis Hunter and Miller now being a starter, but you also have the same defensive coordinator too. So I expect that success they had last year to just continue to happen again this year. I think this defense is in a really good spot. I think this team's in a pretty good spot. They just have to answer the two questions at running back and linebacker. And if they can, they're going to be one tough team to beat next year. All right, moving over to number 7. Let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are yet again another defense that has just felt very under-considered in terms of being a top defense in the league. This is from last year. And what I want you guys to look at how bad these offensive statistics are. 26th in points per game, 28th in yards per game, 32nd on third down conversion rate. Almost every single statistic here is in like the bottom 10 in the NFL. But then compare that now to the defensive side of things. And by the way, NFL is a very, like, if you want to have a good defense, you also have to have a competent offense. Look at the Cleveland Browns, for example, one of the better defenses that statistically are not dominant because their offense is straight shit. This Vikings defense, despite the fact that their offense was horrifically bad last year, still put up some ridiculous numbers. Look at this. 7th in opponents' points per game, 2nd in opponents' yards per game, 3rd in opponents' touchdowns per game. They're the best red zone defense in the league. They're one of the best third down defenses in the league. You can see teams run the ball a lot on them, 51%, but they're 8th in opponents' yards per rush and 9th in opponents' rushing touchdowns per game. And they're one of the best, like, pure secondaries, pure coverage defenses in the league. Obviously teams just ran the football a lot on this team because they just want to shoot clock and force the ball back into JJ McCarthy's hands, but still one of the better defenses in the league. And yet nobody talks about them. Nobody, mentions, they do mention Brian Flores when it comes to head coaching opportunities, but like, why hasn't he gotten this sort of respect? Why isn't he a head coach right now? It baffles me. I think that he should have been a head coach last year. Now it's again another year where he's not a head coach. I kind of wonder if Flores is turning down jobs because he thinks that maybe he has a chance of becoming the Vikings head coach, which, that potentially could happen. But you have one of the best defenses every single year. And they've been like unbelievably consistent as well. And then from a pure roster perspective, this is another team that, is just ridiculously talented. You got Caleb Banks now in the fold. You have Dominique Orange. I'm really excited to see this combination inside the middle of this defense. You got Jalen Redmond. You got Andrew Van Ginkel, Dallas Turner. No Jonathan Grenard, but I'm thinking there should be okay without him. Eric Wilson, Blake Cashman. I'm excited to see Jake Gaudet. And then your secondary, you have Isaiah Rodgers. They just signed James Pierre. You got Byron Murphy, Metellus, Theo Jackson. You get the point. Despite the fact, again, like the Chargers and like the Jacksonville Jaguars, not a lot of massive names on this defense. In fact, I would venture to say your average NFL fan probably only knows a couple guys on this defense, yet this is one of the better units out there. They're so well coached. They're one of the most unique schematic teams out there, and they can just do whatever they want. On some nights, they're going to be more blitz heavy. They're going to be a team that blitzes more often. On some days, they're going to be more man heavy. Other games, they can say, okay, let's hang back a little bit, trust our pass rushers, and play a little bit more zone or play a little deeper. Like, it's just a very versatile defense that's extremely hard to go up against, and the numbers back that. Teams are just trying to run the football on this team than trying to attack them in the air. And, you know, it's obviously given them some success. But I think you go back to that 2025 season when this team, or 2024 season, when they went 13-4, and everyone wants to say, oh, look at Sam Darnold. He was unbelievable. And yes, he was. That defense also got them there too. This team won 9 games last year, and I think you can 110% give most of the credit to the defensive side of things, because they don't win 9 games if this defense is not genuinely one of the league's best units out there. And as we head into this upcoming season, without Jonathan Grenard, I have some questions, and the only reason why they're not a little higher is because I think the high-end talent is a little bit more in these upcoming teams. But the Minnesota Vikings will be right in the mix as well. All right, next up at number 6, let's talk about the New England Patriots. One of the lost things that happened in the 2025 season, by the way, the 2025 season was one of the best we've ever seen, but one of the stories that nobody really talked about when it comes to this Patriots team was how effing awesome this defense was last year. I know all the conversation and buzz was on their young quarterback Drake May and Mike Vrabel and the strides the offense took, which 100% they deserved it because they also balled out last year. But this was, genuinely speaking, one of the best defenses in the league last year, and the turnaround from this unit has been very impressive. I mean, give credit to Mike Vrabel. Vrabel has always been somebody that, you know, I wouldn't call him like a full-time defensive guy, but, you know, he's been a defensive guy as well. And the numbers that this team put up last year defensively is just unbelievable. I mean, look at the scores of these games, and you take away this one game versus Buffalo where they gave up 35. Every game here is 24, 10, 10, even in the postseason, 3, 16, 7. You get up 29. That was a tough matchup. And a lot of, honestly, the Patriots defense gave them opportunities to hang around in this one. But look at the numbers here. 4th in opponents' points per game last year. By the way, 2nd in points per game last year. The turnaround of this unit was very impressive under Mike Vrabel. And as we head into this upcoming season, they've added a little bit more ammunition. And with more development, this defense could take another step forward next year. Christian Barmore, Milton Williams, Harold Landry. You have Gabe Yakis, who I haven't kept up with this one. I don't know if he's been signed yet. Christian Ellis with Robert Spillane. I'm pumped to see Braden Swinson. I hope he gets more playing time this year. Draymond Jones. Christian Gonzalez is one of the best in the league. Carlton Davis has been really good for this team. You add Kevin Byard to the defense. You got Craig Woodson still in there. It's just a stacked defense. And this defense has a bit more of the star power names, like a Christian Gonzalez. I think Carlton Davis is pretty well known. Milton Williams, you know, Robert Spillane, because he just looks funny. But yeah, I mean, there's some guys. Kevin Byard, obviously big name. But there's a lot more of like the star power on this team. And I think they're one of the better coach units out there. This defense was unbelievable last year. And it's crazy to say that wasn't the story of that Patriots team, when I think it maybe should have been. Sure, the offense was great last year, but that defense got them through some hard times in the postseason. So this upcoming year, I expect it to be maybe even better than what it was last year. Granted, the competition level is increasing, so I can't put them in the top 5, but I still expect them to be very good next year. All right, now we're entering into the top 5. At number 5, I have the Philadelphia Eagles. So this was last year, and obviously we all know the struggles that this Eagles offense had last year. They were, you know, in the bottom half of the league, and a lot of different statistics here, besides the red zone. Shout out to the tush push. But you compare that again, like we do with the Vikings, to what this defense was able to do last year. 6th in opponents' points per game, 12th in opponents' yards per game, 8th in opponents' touchdowns per game. And the thing about this Eagles team and why I put them inside my top 5 is that I feel like they had a fantastic offseason that added a lot of star power to this team. And I also just expect this defense, the guys that were on it, to play a little bit better than what they did last year. We'll talk about some of those names here in a second. But what this team did this offseason was add to a defense that was already very talented. In my opinion, like some genuine star talent to this team. Like a defense last year that was great. And then you add in a couple more star players, and now you're looking at a top 5 defense. So one of the players that I expect to play better next year is Jalen Carter. I thought Jalen Carter had a very disappointing year last year. You know, it felt like he kind of got back to his immature ways, and I also just want to see him play better on the field. I felt like last year he left a lot on the table. But then you have Jordan Davis, one of the best run defenders in the league. Moro Ajomo really stepped up to the plate last year. You expect him to continue to do big things. Nolan Smith, he was good last year, not great. Hopefully he can stay healthy and put it all together this year. but you also have Arnold Ebiketie. They just brought in Jonathan Grenard, who hopefully can stay healthy this year. When he's healthy, he's a great pass rusher. You got Jelix Hunt. You also have AJ Epinesa. Linebackers, you got Zach Bond, and I expect a big year for Jahad Campbell. I expect a big year from this guy. And then in your secondary, adding a Reek Woolen to Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean and Andrew Makuba, like, this is going to be one of the best secondaries in football. You throw all this talent in here with Vic Fangio, who's one of the best defensive minds we have in the league, and you have continuity, star power, and elite schematics. I still think this Eagles offense is going to be a work in progress. You have a new offensive coordinator. I have a lot of questions about, can Jalen Hurts thrive with this new receiving core? I think this offense is going to be in for another middling season. But I think this defense is going to be the reason why Philadelphia wins a lot of games next year. Because I think this defense has everything you need. They have big boys up the middle. They have pass rushers. They have great linebackers. And they have a secondary that can turn and run and can play in zone and can play in man. And they're relatively young. Actually, not relatively. They are very young. Coop's young. Quinyon's young. Makuba's young. Reek Woolen is one of the older guys, but he's also very young. It's a very young defense, not just in the secondary, but basically everywhere, that I think is one of the league's best. The turnaround from the years of like Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox to this unit has been beautiful. They've done a really good job here in Philadelphia. Next up at number 4, let's talk about the Denver Broncos. So I want to make it very clear that all of my top 4, you could put them in any order in my opinion. I genuinely believe that the top 4 defenses in the league are these 4 teams, and you could put them in any order, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you. Now, I have my personal opinion, but I'm more than okay with admitting that I'm wrong if I end up being wrong. This Broncos defense was freaking fantastic last year. And, we talked about the Patriots and that Patriots team going on to have an incredible run. Denver Broncos, in my opinion, they could have been a team that had an incredible run too. And it would have mainly been because of this defense. This defense last year was simply unbelievable. They have stars at almost every single position. Malcolm Roach, DJ Jones, Zach Allen. Hopefully Jonathan Cooper can, get the off the field stuff out the way. Nick Bonito, Singleton, Shernad, and then the secondary. Riley Moss isn't great, but he gets the job done. Hopefully a big year for Jahdae Barron. You got Jaquan McMillan, Pat Surtain, who is just unbelievable. Hufanga, Brandon Jones, you get the point. This defense is awesome. It just is. You have continuity in the coaching staff. You have continuity with the roster. You did lose John Franklin Myers, which I think is a bit of a loss for this team. And in addition to that, you have the off the field issues with Jonathan Cooper that hopefully are getting resolved now. And there's a lot of unknowns with Jahdae Barron at this point, your first round pick from last year, who was kind of a rotational player at times, but really didn't make a huge impact for this team. Hopefully this year, with a year under his belt, he can find his footing in the league, because I do think he's a very talented player that obviously I'm rooting for. But man, this defense, it's been unbelievable. Pat Surtain is such a weapon for this defense that they can isolate him on one side and have Pat Surtain completely shut down half the field. Like, he's just that good of a football player. And it makes life so much easier for the Bonitos and the Coopers of the world and the big boys up the middle. I mean, this defensive line has been one of the best pass rushing units in the league, because they can absolutely feast knowing that they're going to be given the time necessary to get after the quarterback, because their secondary is that good. It's just one of the best defenses out there. And had Bo Nix not got hurt, I think the Broncos go on to make it to the Super Bowl. And I think they would have gave Seattle a run for their money. I really do. So I think they're going to be a really good team this year, and it's going to be off the back of this defense yet again. But next up at number 3, let's talk about the Seattle Seahawks. Again, I'm going to reiterate this over and over and over again. You could honestly move these teams anywhere in my top 4, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you. I have the Seahawks here at number 3. They did lose some pieces this offseason, and they are getting a little bit older on the defensive line. But I still think, despite that, they're still in a really good spot to have another very, very good season. Number 1, Mike McDonald is one of the best defensive minds out there in the league. Like, he just is simply that guy. And we saw it last year with how impressive their playoff run was, completely shutting out the San Francisco 49ers, creating the necessary stops versus a great Rams offense, and just shutting out Drake May in the Super Bowl as well. They did a fantastic job all of last year. And as we head into this upcoming season, it's essentially the exact same unit with just a few small changes here and there. Defensive line wise, it's the same unit from last year, minus Boy Mafe, but you got D-Law, You got Nwosu, you got Derek Hall, you got Dante Fowler, you got Murphy, Jaron Reed, Leonard Williams. I think Byron Murphy is going to turn into genuinely one of the best players in football if he continues to take steps forward. You got Drake Thomas with Ernest Jones. You also have Tyrese Knight, who I don't want to forget. And then your secondary, you got Witherspoon, who's elite, Josh Jobe, Nicky Monwari. Excited to see Julian Neal and Bud Clark and what they can do, but your safeties are also very good. You put together the continuity from last year with the same defensive mind, with some new faces here and there that are more depth options right now. But I expect this unit to get right back to where they were last year. Now, the question that Seattle is going to have to answer down the road, probably after this year and maybe after 2027 as well, how do we start to replace some of these older guys in our defensive line? Leonard Williams is older. DeMarcus Lawrence is older and was already, contemplating retirement. Jaron Reed is not a spring chicken either, so you're going to have to start to slowly replace these guys. So that will be a question they're going to have to answer soon, and I think they should probably start doing that next offseason. But we'll have to wait and see. All in all, this team is elite. They're special. They're one of the best teams in football, and I think they should be one of the favorites to win it all this year, not just because of this offense, but because of this defense. All right, let's move over to our number 2 team, and it is going to be the Los Angeles Rams. Am I drinking the Kool-Aid? Potentially, I might be drinking the Kool-Aid here because I'm putting this defense at number 2, despite the fact that statistically last year, they were like a top 10, 11, or 12 defense in the league. But when you go out there and have the offseason that this team just had, by making a trade for what is, in my opinion, the best defensive player in the league, and in my also opinion, the best player in football, one of the better corners in the league too, and then you also signed his teammate who was also very good, and you plug both those guys on a defense that already had Kobe Turner and Poona Ford and Braden Fisk and Byron Young and Cam Kitchens and Cameron Curl and Quentin Lake. And again, you're just talking about one of the best defenses in football. It's, to me, the number 2 defense. Now, they have to bring along these guys. Myles Garrett has to be put into a new system. Same with Trent McDuffie, same with Jalen Watson. But you already had a really good core group of guys. You already had one of the better pass rush front sevens in football last year. And then you take away Jared Verse, a negative, but put one of the biggest positives you can add with a 23 sack edge rusher in Myles Garrett, who's going to be unbelievable for this defense. And then you give him some help in the back end. A unit last year that was kind of the reason why they lost to Seattle was the secondary. And you throw a Pro Bowl caliber corner in Trent McDuffie and a borderline Pro Bowl guy in Jalen Watson. The Los Angeles Rams, I think, defensively last year were a bit frustrating because you knew how good they could be, but they were just being held back significantly by the lack of options in the secondary. Like, they just didn't have the dudes, right? Kobe Durant, Emmanuel Forbes, some of the other guys they threw in there last year, they were fine. They got the job done, but they weren't elite or special. And when it mattered most, could they cover the Jackson Smith and Jigbas, the Jamar Chases, the AJ Browns, the CeeDee Lambs, the Justin Jeffersons? I don't think those guys could get the job done. But you put in there a Jalen Watson and a Trent McDuffie to throw along with some really good safeties and nickels, a great defensive coordinator, and then a pass rush that should be, honestly, probably should be the best in the league next year. And I think everything else works. I think everything about this defense should be good. The one question that I do have for this team is going to be, are their linebackers good enough? I think they're good. Are they good enough? And do they have depth at corner? But if this defense can stay healthy, and as we see this lineup today, if it does work out and it's able to play the full 17, unlikely but hopeful, then this is one of the best defenses in football, like straight up. Again, you can move them around. You can put them at 4, you can put them at 3, you can put them at 1, and I wouldn't disagree with you. That's how good Myles Garrett and Trent McDuffie are. But they are not my number 1, because at my number 1, I have the Houston Texans. Listen, I don't want to sugarcoat it. This defense is special. It is a special unit. We talked about it with some other teams like the Minnesota Vikings and like the Philadelphia Eagles. Look at the offensive stats here. 13th in points per game, 19th in yards per game, 23rd in touchdowns per game. They were not a good running football team. They were not a good passing football team. They threw a lot of interceptions. They got sacked a lot. But here you have on the defense, 2nd in opponents' points per game, 1st in opponents' yards per game, 7th in opponents' touchdowns per game, top 10 in almost every statistic. One of, if not the best run defenses in the league, and one of, if not the best secondaries coverage teams in the league. This defense is, generally speaking, fantastic. They are fantastic. They have the star power necessary. I think they have good depth. I think they have excellent starters. And I think they're just going to continue to get better and better as they start to get older. This is a younger football team. Now, they have some older guys here and there, But Will Anderson Jr. is just going to continue to get better and better. I think he should have a career year this year. You add in Caden McDonald with Sheldon Rankins and Tommy and Logan Hall, and I think this is a really good interior. The one thing from last year that I don't think was particularly special was the interior defensive line, but I think Caden McDonald is fantastic. So I think he'll be a huge plus for this team. But you also have Daniil Hunter. It's not listed here, but they also just signed Jadeveon Clowney as well. And there's a lot of good things about Jadeveon Clowney. He had 8 sacks last year? Maybe it was 10 for the Dallas Cowboys, and he wasn't there the whole season. So yeah, he'll be awesome for them. Henry To'oTo'o just got paid. You got Azeez Al-Shaair. I believe EJ Speed's out. Don't quote me on that, but I think he might be out. But still, linebackers are great. And then the secondary, dude. Derek Stingley. You signed Reed Blankenship. You have Kalen Bullock, Kamari Laster, Jalen Petrie. Holy, you know what? Holy S word. Holy shit. This defense is awesome, dude. It is so good. They have pass rush. They have linebackers. I think they fixed the interior enough. And then your secondary is probably the best in the league. Probably. It might be the best in the league. And I think that pass rush combination, while they don't have the same depth of the Los Angeles Rams or the Denver Broncos, maybe even the Seattle Seahawks, I think their top 2 guys in Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson are 1A, 1B. Both those guys can go off for 15 plus sacks, and then all you need is the guys around them to just do their job. It's a special unit. It's one of the best in the league. But you guys let me know in the comment section below your top 10 defenses heading into the 2026 season. Our next video, we'll be talking about the top 10 offenses heading into 2026, so stay tuned for that. We are on the road to 25,000 subscribers. So if you're new around here, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button. I'd absolutely love it. And have a good day. Love you guys. Peace.